create this Mixamo character, and then how to get him throwing this ball. The last part is just setting the ball on fire. With regard to that, there's already a tutorial out there. You go to this website here, lightwave.server808.net. I did a previous video on making a fireball, different techniques you can try. This is probably the key one here, is on making fire, basically using the same settings that are in this tutorial right here. I would recommend, you know, watching this tutorial again if you might have already watched it. So once you have those basic settings down, then pretty clear on the basics are to get the fire coming out. On this one, look, I'll show you how I'll walk you through sort of the settings I did. The first thing is you go on the new sphere object, which is this thing. And thinking about this whole thing, you don't even need to have the sphere. You can hide it if you want. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go with this. But the first thing is to, if you go into properties, and you go into add effects, you add an FX emitter, and then there's just a lot of different ways you can tweak this. And this is kind of the settings that I have right now. I had a birth rate of kind of 500. I adjusted the generator size, as you can see, small here, to control the actual size of the flame coming out of the back. On the particles, I didn't change too much here. The one setting you probably will adjust a lot is the lifetime, and that basically will control how long this flame is in existence. So you might want to play with these numbers, the lifetime. That's when you'll be playing with, and how the birth rate too, because one of the issues that I ran into is that the fireball didn't look, the flame coming out of the back looked too, I hate to use the word spearish, but that's how it looks, because they're coming out as spheres or hypervoxels. So kind of get them to blend in together, you might have to adjust the birth rate as well as the lifetime. And then the other one you want to play around with is the parent motion. So it'll follow the motion of the ball, and it gets a little squirrely that way. And so if you drop down the parent motion, that'll affect you too. So I didn't even adjust anything on here, although you can try using explosion and just kind of play with these settings until you get. So I'll hit play here. That's kind of the trail, the particle stream that I ended up with. Again, there's a number of different ways. The other thing is, it's a good way to just figure out what everything does. So let me just jump the explosion up a little bit. So it's a good way to figure everything out. On this other tutorial I did on making a fireball, I had recommended increasing explosion as well. Okay, so then once you got your particle effects set up, you just go into render properties, and you go to volumetrics and make sure you use legacy volumetrics on. And then once that's done, you come into the backdrop and you go to hypervoxels. And this is where you'll have to watch that other tutorial on making fire, because basically it's all the same settings. But again, you can play around with these. So play around with everything's on like the dissolve is on a gradient. These are all set up in the making fire tutorial. So you'll adjust dissolve, you'll adjust particle size. Under shading, you're going to adjust color, luminosity, and density. And of course, these are all a little time consuming to put through, but then, like I said, once you get the hang of this and the knack of this one, luminosity is probably the most involved. But each one of these settings plays a part in the overall look of the fire coming out. And it is a little bit of a challenge to make fire in LightWave. I mean, it really is. But if you play around with the settings, you can get something that I think looks pretty good. And then there's this one, dissolve too. And then the other one is the texture amplitude. And these are all covered. This is the one I was actually playing around with quite a bit. So I really bumped this value up. Let's just to play around with this, like just this one setting here. Let's take a look in VPR what kind of flame I get. The one thing is you can just drag the playhead. And of course, everything can vary. See, like right there, the ball gets ahead, and then but it plays back so fast you don't really notice. That's just, I think, in one frame. So it literally just goes by so fast. But this is what I'm talking about with the flame kind of breaking up here. So if you didn't like this long of a tail on it, what you'd do for that is you would adjust the birth rate, right? That would be one way to adjust that down. Sorry, the lifetime, right? So you could just drop that down to like 7. And what's cool in here, it'll adjust in real time. So if we want to make the tail shorter, we're just going to bring the down. Maybe even, I think I had this at 5 originally. And then it kind of makes it a little more continuous there, right? Like I said, I was playing around with this here, and this is actually supposed to be 50. And see how that ties it all together a little bit better. And the other tutorial I did on making a fireball too, one of the things is, and again, these are just recommendations. You can adjust all these. So let's just I was turned that up for a reason, so I must have liked the way that it was looking. Yeah, so as I bump this setting up, see how it's looking more turbulent. So I actually like that look. So I think that's why it adjusted as you do this, I mean, this is the hardest part of the whole thing. It does look good. I think it looks pretty good. You'll be sure, the one thing I liked about this whole thing was you'll be sure to at least get a good one frame or two, just some stills out of here that look really fantastic. Like, I've got some really good shots out of here. I mean, I think they're just badass looking. That's basically it. However you know to make fire in LightWave, this is one way to do it. There's some other ways to do it too. Now I'm noticing here that the last thing I'll mention is that if you go to the backdrop, let's see, I don't know if this will make any difference, but we change the backdrop color. You get a little bit different effects too. So, and this ball here, of course, that's in the surface editor. And you can, I don't know, I have it on dielectric right now. Let's just change it to black and see what that looks like. Yeah, or, you know, you can even change it to a color here, like a fire color. So let's go back to, or even a gradient, kind of making this ball look like whatever you want it to look like, really. I just chose that as a black kind of random envelope, but let's change that back to, this is a kind of a clear color. Let's see. Yeah, so that's what I kind of had it at. So anyway, that's it. So just have fun, keep playing around with it. The more you do play around with it, the more you'll learn about how to create fire, and you'll get faster and faster at doing it. I think you'll come up with something that really looks good. So anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I will talk to you next time.